going on, boys? It's Daddy Big here, and welcome back to the podcast. We got Big Man Sam here.
What's going on?
My favorite boy. And today we're gonna be talking a little bit. This was an idea you came to me with a few weeks ago, and you wanted to talk a little bit about just maintaining mental health through school, like throughout the process of going to school and all of that stuff. And I guess this could probably apply pretty well to having a full-time job or any kind of daily grind like that.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously we've had the most experience with being in high school, so we're gonna probably center it around that. But did you want to kick us off with anything here?
Yeah. So I just kind of wanted to just say kind of why I chose this, because increasingly I kind of just I'd say just throughout the fall season, I just saw people around me just really kind of declining in mental health. And I mean, that sounds like a very big or
Yeah.
you need to jump in with some intervention or something, but genuinely just this slight apathy that kind of set in, and it just really, it just kind of appeared to me all of a sudden just how draining school can be for people.
Yeah. For the record, this is probably gonna be going up either late December or January, but as of recording, it's November. So, yeah. But I get what you mean. I think that you either come into a new school year either being ready to take things on or already kind of being in that sore mentality. But I think that all of us it's easy to reach a point where you're just tired of it, I mean, how do you see that develop in people? Do you see it in your friends? You just see it as because I feel like a lot of times there's kind of a generational sort of just generational thing, feelings that are understood. And I feel like for I feel like kind of for people our age, there's kind of this existentialism that's imperative to our culture. The thought that life is meaningless. Kind of I don't know. I feel like people our age kind of generally have a nihilistic mood.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
but I kind of went off there. But do you think that how do you see this develop in people? This phenomenon of this growing apathy you talked about.
Yeah. So I kind of just want to bring a couple of the things that you said together, because honestly, the way that I see it most in other people is by comparing it to myself. Because honestly, I've struggled with existential questions and things like that, and honestly, I've had periods where I've been plagued by nihilism and stuff like that, and it's very easy if you don't keep yourself content, if you don't keep yourself occupied with things, which is honestly what school can provide for a little bit. It's very easy to slip into those things, kind of slip into despair, and I guess depression would be
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, there was something else I was gonna say, I don't remember, but yeah, it's very easy to just kind of find yourself in those places. And I guess it's just one thing that I've struggled with a little bit as of recently too, is just falling off with communication. Because you can genuinely just start to see those signs in people, and it's very hard to know what to do, because do you reach out? Do they just need space? Do you are you reading it wrong? There are so many questions that go into trying to help each other through that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think that, one thing I've always found is that with, I mentioned this idea of shared experiences that people of our kind of general age group have, you know what I mean? And there certainly is something to be said for your peers, and I think that for me, one of the greatest comforts in dealing with these things in life has always been that that your peers are going through the same thing, and if they can all do it, you can do it too, and you can talk to them about their own experiences and draw off of each other. And I think that's just a special thing, but kind of going off of what you we're saying on communication, there will be times when I kind of get the sense that, someone's not having a great day. And it's it's always kind of a weird thing to think about, like you said, should you reach out? Should you just give them space? It's always kind of a question of, do I talk to them about it or not?
Yeah. And sorry, I just kind of wanted to take that back to your idea of like shared experiences, because I think
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest things for our generation is that we all have one big shared experience, and that's COVID. As
That's
far
true.
as
Yeah.
mental health
They
goes.
they say that most generations have like a shared event.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah,
for like our
I've heard that.
parents, it was 9/11. For
Mhm.
like our grandparents, it was probably Pearl Harbor.
Mhm.
Like one of those like events that are just so massive that everyone can relate to it. Everyone
Absolutely.
remembers when it happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I remember the day we were at a school and they're going, it's gonna be, well, what did they say? 4 weeks? Yeah, I think it was 4 weeks. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's not 4 weeks. So I was, yeah, and just like the fact that like, you're talking about those other struggles, but I don't, um, and of course like things like 9/11 are gonna have like
Yeah.
a trauma to them that could be,
Yeah.
but COVID was such a long term thing and such
Yeah.
a
I mean,
had
like, it's weird, right? Because like it felt like a year or two as
mhm
far as like how long most of the effects lasted.
mhm
Seems like comparing that to an event like 9/11 or Pearl Harbor, like it
mhm
seems like such a long time.
mhm
But like is it really that long of a time at all? You know what I mean?
I
Like
guess
in
taking a
comparison
grand
to your
scale.
whole life,
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
like I guess to me a lot of it I mean, I guess we just don't really have a great perception of time as
Yeah.
humans.
Yeah, I guess that
And our memories of the past are kind of warped, but to me it already seems kind of far away, you
yeah,
know.
that's interesting.
Maybe it's just because we just kind of so little happened for a lot of us because we
Yeah.
couldn't do anything that
Yeah,
it just
oh,
kind of
genuinely.
that it just feels small.
Yeah.
Like I barely even remember my when I took my entire year online
Yeah.
in school.
Oh, me neither. Yeah,
Like
it's
it just
crazy.
all ran together in a way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, just like one of the things that I find like I do recall are just my darker moments during all that.
yeah.
And I think that's kind of I think a lot of people can relate to that. And it's just like it's taking COVID and just like I don't know, realizing how that like kind of ended up shaping people. Isn't that
Mhm.
such an interesting thing?
Yeah, I mean like I've talked to friends, who said that COVID like I've heard people that said that COVID taught them 'cause they were the kind of person that was always more of an introvert,
Mhm.
you know, but being completely alone during the pandemic taught them that they do need people in their life,
Yeah.
and they after like their resolution at the end of 2020 was to make more friends and talk to more new people,
Yeah.
and then well I didn't know them that
Mhm.
long ago. I guess their resolution came true,
Hmm.
at least between me and them. But
Mhm.
yeah, I guess everyone kind of came out of it differently,
Mhm.
And I've had in the I'm confused on the schedule of things at this point, but there will be podcasts where I talk about, or I go in more in depth talking about quarantine and
Mhm.
the memories and the specific things that happened and all the feelings and all that.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's just I get what you mean about that whole shared experience
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But
And it's just interesting the story that you told because I relate to that so heavily. Like that
mhm.
was more or less what I went through. I don't think I ever made a solid resolution to say like, "Hey, this is what I'm doing." But genuinely, I was such an introverted person before COVID and everything. And it's interesting to me because it genuinely showed such an importance to having a support system in your life.
Yeah, for sure.
And just seeking out people and developing that for myself and being that for other people, um, I think was one of the biggest things to come out of that.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of getting back to our main topic here about
Mm-hmm.
just mental health in high school, like what were there any other things you wanted to say about just the observing other people around you kind of break down like that slowly?
Yeah, so it's just such an interesting thing to look at. Just like our how little our school system kind of seems to value mental health, which is like,
Yeah.
and I mean that's a fairly common thing that you'll hear,
Yeah,
but
that's not exactly a hot take, but
no, not at all. But it's interesting to me because like who would you, like, just let me see. Sorry, I don't mean to like keep connecting back to COVID, but I think it's pretty pertinent here. Let's say back in COVID, absolutely isolated, who do you go to within the school to talk to? There's not a support system there.
Yeah.
There's nothing. There's no actual like interior means of actually helping a student there.
Yeah.
And
I mean, like, yeah, don't get me wrong, right? Like, I have plenty of my gripes about the school system that we could talk about for another hour in a different episode.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that comforted me most as I matured more and thought more about it and grew more out of my rebellious phase was that I think that as the students, we all are victims of like the system that's in place.
Mm-hmm.
But I honestly think that teachers are also victims.
Oh, absolutely. No question about that.
I mean, like, I'll never forget, like, my sophomore year government teacher when I took AP government.
Mm-hmm.
He I really loved that guy. He had the vibes of like a college professor. but no, he just I just remember, like, cuz at the school I went to, we did AP government in a single semester as sophomores, whereas most schools in the country do it as juniors or seniors over the course of a year.
Yeah.
So for some reason our administration thought that was a good idea. But I just remember the first day my teacher was just sat down and was like, "We're not going to be able to get through everything by the exam. But
Yep.
you know what? I'm going to try my best, and we're all going to try our best here. Feel me?"
Yeah.
And it's just like that whole. It really is kind of. I mean, yeah, it's just like. Obviously, students. Like, there are way more students than there are teachers that are affected, but teachers, they go through a lot with stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
I mean, like, for me, one of the most essential parts, like, when you talk about support systems in school,
Mm-hmm.
and how there's nothing in place for that. I agree that there is largely nothing in place formally,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that, like I said, the connection with your peers is so important.
Absolutely.
And they're all right there for you.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I've found that some of my best experiences in school have been through my teachers, because like a lot of teachers are really smart and are able to like talk to you about things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I guess I was always the kid that was able to talk to adults like that.
Mm-hmm.
I took them seriously and respected them and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I may have had a complete disrespect for the system, I still thought pretty highly of, well, the teachers that I liked. I also had plenty of teachers I didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
One in particular I could name that didn't like me very much either, but that's a very different story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess my whole point there is just that, in a way, teachers are going through the same thing that we are
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the times with school, So I feel that having a bond with your teachers, at least for me, was always really important, and that really helped me with things.
Yeah, and bond or not, just like there's such a lack of like basic courtesy towards teachers that I see so often.
Yeah.
It's a little concerning, to be honest with you. And there's some teachers that, like, they'll completely demean the students, and it gets pretty aggravating. And it's just a consistent thing where they just treat them like children, no matter like what grade they're in. Like I have almost full senior classes where the teacher still feels like they're talking to kindergartners, and it's just like,
I know what you mean.
Yeah, and so it's just like, yeah.
And it's just, I mean, there are, just like students, right? There are good and bad teachers out there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just kind of how it is. But
yeah. And just,
I mean, like, you talk about how just like totally like disrespecting the teachers. Or, I don't know what exact word you used.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like kind of making a point to the topic of mental health in school. I feel like one huge thing for me has been keeping school at school as much as possible.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I know it's not always easy or even possible to get all your homework done at school, but I found that what happens when I focus and actually apply myself during given work time I made the decision to give myself study halls in high school because I wanted that extra time.
Mm-hmm.
And like, especially if you're doing extracurriculars, right? Like, you just it because and it was a mental thing for me too. Because like again, I've talked about this before. When it was COVID, I struggled to focus on my homework just because it was such a convoluted environment where I did everything in my room at my desk, you know. But I mean, my point here is like I just feel like I see so many people just blow off school, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's especially like I remember in my study halls back in high school, like I would be working and everyone else would just be like watching YouTube, watching anime on their phones, you know.
Yeah.
And to me it's like you signed up for like an hour a day of like a quiet environment to focus and get work done.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just not even using like I get sometimes you just need to chill, but and like for me it was always like in class time and passing time, always trying to get things done because usually like for me, even though I was taking advanced classes, the workload wasn't that bad when I just put in the work and really focused, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel like one thing that really contributed to me having good mental health in high school, at least as I got older and figured things out in life, was just getting my shit done.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
And especially getting it done at school, because then you can have time for yourself at home.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I'm one of the advocates like for like homework being kind of filtered out of the school system, even if it would be like, you know, adding extra time to actually instruct. But I will completely agree with you on that some people will genuinely they'll say that same thing. They'll say like homework shouldn't exist, that this and that, and will also completely misuse their time,
Yeah.
talk about how consuming it is while not doing it.
Yeah, it's just like it's so convoluted because
Yeah.
like yeah, I agree that, you know, having to do a bunch of schoolwork at home sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I guess for me, like at some point, with a lot of my defiant thoughts about school, I just kind of accepted it. I just kind of
Yeah.
started doing
Yeah.
and just working with what I could do
Got
and making the best
caught
of it.
up with it,
You know?
I mean, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, and for me too, like there were so many classes, and I was like I was able to naturally pick up school pretty well,
Mm-hmm.
right? I was lucky enough to have a lot of things come easier for me than other people. But and again, like that's fortunate for me, right? But part of it that people don't realize too is that I also am putting more work in than other people, you know? It's like it's not just because I'm naturally smart or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But like I mean, that can be a part of it for people, but for me I genuinely just knew how to do school.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Like it's its own skill.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one thing that like literally like for me it was always getting engaged, right?
Mm-hmm.
Finding a way to force myself to care about what I was learning about, even if I really didn't, you know. Because if you get invested and and for God's sake actually pay attention
yeah.
to like lectures and notes and assignments and all that stuff, you know. Because like realistically there were classes for me where all I had to do was show up, do my work, and actually be engaged.
Mm-hmm.
And that was all it took,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
And I had one teacher that taught my stats class that would always say like you got to be all in, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he always said too like it just blows his mind when kids will he just always found it so backwards that people would suddenly be worried about all the material that they didn't know on quiz day. And you'd always
Mm-hmm.
tell us the day like getting ready for the quiz is every day before the quiz day. You know, you shouldn't come in asking me questions about what we did 2 weeks ago when we're here to take a test on it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's very true, you know? It requires like every day should be a day where you're committing. You know, again, we all have bad days, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I'm just trying to point out here this whole thing where at least for me it seemed like almost everyone around me just wasn't putting in the same work, wasn't putting in the same care to it. And again, it's like I know people hate school, but there's something to be said for at least putting effort into it. You know?
Yeah, but I'd also like, I'd say that, you know, actually it kind of ties back pretty nicely that mental health is also such a massive proponent.
Oh yeah, I mean they
And
go
stuff.
hand in hand, of course.
Yeah, and especially because I mean, I've always just seen and experienced kind of the vicious cycle that happens with grades, because it ends up being, you have a bit of a slump, and then your grades suffer a bit because of it. And suddenly, because your grades are suffering, then your self-esteem goes down, because a lot of people, I mean, genuinely do place a lot of importance on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say, like, yeah, there's a massive portion of our school that will genuinely place, like, a fair amount of their self-esteem. I'd say especially in, like, the higher classes, IB, AP kind of stuff,
Yeah.
that will genuinely be all about that stuff. And so when that starts to happen, then, it's this cycle of, self-esteem goes down, productivity goes down, self-esteem, and it's just this thing that continues to go into the ground until you have some intervention.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the grading system is just... like you said, it really affects people.
Yeah.
People get to the point where they become so obsessed with it that they like place their self-worth on the letter in the grade book.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there was this video by this, she's like an English college, like a college professor that teaches English.
Mm-hmm.
Her name is like Zoe B or something. She made this video talking about, I believe it was called Grading is a Scam and Motivation is a Myth. And she kind of just talked about all this stuff. It was like an hour-long video just like talking about like the negative effects that grades have on kids, And it's like, I don't remember all the specific points. There was a lot of good stuff. But that just kind of speaks to what we're saying here, Is this just, because it messes with people, and it becomes, I mean, like, I remember one time in my English class, I was doing some small group work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was working with this guy and this girl, and the girl said, she was like, I bet you guys did like way better on your papers than me, And she asked the guy I was working with like what he got, and he was like, I got a 100. And she asked me, and I was like, yeah, I also got 100.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, oh, I got a 95. I'm so bad.
God forbid. Oh my
and it's
gosh.
like,
jeez.
You know what I mean? It's like a 95 is a good grade. But like people get to the point where, whether it's from themselves or from their parents or whatever it is, they get to the point where it becomes such a huge deal for them and such a huge point of stress, And I guess for me, it was never as big of a deal. It was always sleep over a homework assignment or just, that kind of thing. But I mean, yeah, you can't ignore it because there are so many people that have that. I mean, like, have you, like, how do you see people deal with grades, Any other thoughts on it you had?
Yeah, so I kind of want to just go off because, like, I've just found, like, what's the end goal of getting those good grades? It's college, right?
Yeah,
like,
sure.
For the most part, yeah, it's just people wanting to, get into their dream college, into a good college. And I see people sacrificing so much, like we've talked about, just sacrificing for grades and just kind of like, the vicious cycle, everything like that. And it's crazy to me because you can have, like, I'd consider myself to have like a good balance as far as like grades and stuff go. I balance my grades, my social life, and my extracurriculars. Sometimes less mental health than I should, but yeah, all of those things together. And and the thing is, having that balance, like I've started to get acceptance letters as a senior to colleges, to very good colleges. You can genuinely have, and I don't have the like best grades in my grade. I'd say I'm about like middle of the pack. Like you can exhibit that moderation while still maintaining your future.
Yeah,
it feels like people should know that, because genuinely people will just put so much of themselves into something that they are genuinely exceeding both the actual goals that they need to, but also exceeding their own capabilities, their own to the point of burnout that it's unnecessary.
Yeah, for sure. I was intrigued by you talking about, I was thinking so hard about it, now I forgot.
It's all good. I've had that happen.
But no, about this whole idea of, when you were talking about your priority list, you know, and you listed mental health as like a side note.
Yeah.
And it's like, I talked about universal experiences and kind of how people our age are almost nihilistic in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly think that like mental health being taken as a joke is so prevalent
Oh, it is
to people.
absolutely. Yeah.
And like it's just it's more so the way that like it's seen as like it seems as though everyone has mental health like that low on their priority list, you
Yeah.
know? And like to me that's like a huge problem.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I'm
And
part of the problem. The fact that I listed that off in a kind of comedic way
yeah,
is like,
exactly, because
yeah,
it's
no,
like
I recognize
it's like
that. Yeah,
it's what's seen as like socially acceptable. You
yeah,
know, it's like in any culture there are behaviors that make you trustworthy or make you socially like like socially knowledgeable.
mm-hmm.
You know, like across like in countries like Japan, they have cultural normalities that seem really strange to us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like things that just seem weird, like the way sometimes like ways that like men and women kind of interact with each other
Hmm.
in public,
Mm-hmm.
that seems strange to us here in America, but to them it's totally normal and it's seen as like a sign of social intelligence for people to be able to demonstrate that.
Yeah, and I bet people think we're pretty weird for the, you know,
Yeah.
amount of stuff that we joke about as far as like mental health and that
Yeah,
kind of thing.
it's like it's like
Yeah,
it's like this nihilistic view on health.
yeah.
It's like it's taken as a joke, and like I said, like, do you disagree that that's kind of like joking about those kind of things is like seen as being like socially intelligent? You know what I mean? I'm sounding
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of pretentious saying social things like that, but
No,
like
I
you get what I
definitely
mean, right?
understand where you're coming from, and I guess like the biggest example that I've seen of that, I mean, it kind of blurs the line between mental and physical health. But have you ever like witnessed a couple people having like a battle of sleep deprivation?
This is exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's like
you know exactly what
like-
I'm talking about.
it's like a sign of it's like glorified to not like get sleep and like
Yeah, it's
you know, like-
damn, I got 7 hours of sleep, and then someone will come in and be like, no, I got 4. And then
Exact-
someone
like,
else chimes in, I
I
got
know-
2, and it's like, why are you doing that to yourself?
exactly. It's like because
Oh
I was
my
always the
gosh.
kid that would say, "Oh, I got 7," because I was always a little I was and still am a little bitch, very fragile. You know,
I mean, to be honest
need,
with you,
need a lot of sleep.
that's the
but,
way
like-
I am. I get like you know, I'd say any less than 7 hours of sleep, and I feel like super groggy the next day. Actually,
Yeah.
that's kind of how I am today. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, for sure. But like that was one thing that always scared me about theater kids specifically is like when the musical was going on, it seems like it was a
Yeah.
constant competition on who had the most caffeine in their bloodstream.
Yeah, yeah. I
It's
never bragged about it, but boy, chugging monsters and stuff for Tech Week. I am not.
Yeah,
not
it's
proud
like,
of that.
and that's like
It's just
the
what you
thing
had
is
to
like
do.
that's just like that's so normalized. It's just part of our culture.
Mhm.
This idea of like being on the grind and not getting sleep and just like
Yeah.
popping a monster to get through things, and
Yeah.
that was again, it's like I feel like I'm not like other guys. I'm not like other Zoomers.
Oh
right?
no, Cam.
But like really, for me, I always I talked about this before. For me, mental health was always number one on my list,
Mhm.
pretty much above everything else.
Mhm.
And for me, that was what allowed me to handle everything else. Was
Yeah.
taking care of myself, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And like, how do you think that we got to this point where our outlooks on our own lives are like so depraved that taking care of ourselves is just a joke?
I don't know. I know that I'm definitely a culprit of it at times. Like I will put my mental health first, like occasionally. Like it will be a priority. I'm trying to make it more of a priority. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to like start therapy and stuff like that because I see it'll be
Yeah.
pretty beneficial for me. But I've also had times like I talked about Tech Week of like the play, and then times like those, like genuinely, I don't know. It just feels like it's a lot worse for some other people that just like find it as a normalized thing. But for me, during that, it's like, I don't know. I just feel like I'm working for something that's like bigger than myself, and honestly, it just becomes a battle of like survival.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess just you mentioned how you like sometimes you prioritize it, right?
I
And-
guess it should be an all the time.
Yeah, but that kind of sentiment made me, and that this might not be exactly you, but this made me think of. It seems like for a lot of people with their health,
Mm.
they don't take it seriously until it's like a critical problem. You know,
Yeah.
like You know what I mean? Like,
I'd agree with that.
until the mental breakdown happens, you don't think to yourself that you might be too stressed.
Yeah.
You know?
No,
And I think that is just quite a bit of human nature that I'm not going to
Yeah.
try to say we need to change.
It's the same thing as showing up on a test day and asking the teacher about everything you learned, right?
Yeah.
The last minute is
We just get overwhelmed.
yeah.
But I guess, and that's why it's so hard, is because learning to be proactive with things like that is such a challenge. And it took me a lot of time and a lot of good work to get to the point where I could prioritize that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where I could tell myself, it's 9:30.
Mm-hmm.
I could edit this video or do this homework assignment or whatever, and then spend an hour on it and go to bed, cutting 8 hours to the absolute hair. Or I could just know that it'll take me a minute to wind down and get to bed and get an extra half hour of sleep over 8 and then feel good tomorrow, you know? And it's just, and again, there are some times where things are so urgent that you have to do them, right? But ideally, you can plan out better than that, first of all, and just, be more proactive with mental health. I think that's what people struggle with, is getting on top of things before they're a problem, Yeah. And I know it's again, like you said, and like I've said a million times before, it's all cycles, right? Negative things stack on top of each other.
Yeah.
If you're behind, you're going to get more behind and all that stuff. But I'll get off my soapbox. But, was there anything else you wanted to point to with this whole idea of mental health in high school?
So I'd say there completely was something that I was going to say, but listening to you, I sort of forgot. Yeah, but genuinely, like, God, what was I going to say? Oh, man. Oh, yeah. It's a little bit worrying for me, the fact that we have this kind of complex in high school, the fact that we're going into the working world with these same ideas. Because if you genuinely go into, say, like getting like a full-time job, and you have either of these things, the complete overwork of yourself or complete apathy, as we've talked about, either of those things, those are both incredibly bad things for like when you actually want to make something your life career. Yeah.
And I mean, the American public education system was designed to turn people into factory line workers. And it really should have changed more since it was designed that way. But I mean, I find that a lot of the usefulness in school is learning those skills of having a job. Learning how to deal with people you don't like. I'm sounding like my dad now. Like learning how to deal with people you don't like, learning how to work under authority, learning how to get things done, manage your time. Like, to me, it was always more so just those kind of real life skills you had to know. And again, it's all through this kind of convoluted educational lens, but that's really kind of what it boils down to at the end of the day, So I get what you mean, that people are going to carry these bad habits over into real life. And that's going to become a problem.
Yeah.
Because I don't want my brain surgeon to be on 2 sleeps hopped up on Monster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's such a... Yeah. And it's just like, it's interesting because I guess like the education system, it hasn't really strayed from its original design, yet it's yielding things that like could be dangerous for like for a generation. So I don't know.
Yeah,
it's just sure. It's definitely, I think, very real evidence that it's failed to keep up with like, the modern age.
I think so, and there are a lot more different styles of education that are coming out now that, while not anywhere near widespread, are proving to be pretty good alternatives. Like buildings where students are encouraged to learn at their own pace, and there aren't grades and that kind of thing. These different ideas on how education can be handled. Essentially, more kind of like more structured homeschooling. And it's like, I don't know. Yeah,
and I'm really hoping we do move towards those things. Because, I mean, if we do track the path of education throughout, like, the entire course of, like, its history, like let's just say American education, I mean, we've come a long way since, like, all students' grades being posted up on a door for the entire class to see.
True.
Like, I'd say there has already been progress in that like
Yeah,
grade
yeah,
supremacy culture.
yeah. I'm not saying, I'm not pointing finger at the pointing fingers at the big bad, saying it's nothing's ever changed, but it
Hmm.
is still like the fundamental ideas are still kind of there.
Yeah, no.
No, I think that was
I'd
the
say the
point you were
exact
making.
same thing. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I think as we're kind of wrapping it up here a little bit, was there any other points you wanted to hit or revisit, or any final thoughts you had?
Nothing in particular. We've been all around, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it seems like every podcast that's vaguely about mental health turns into me soapboxing about how I'm so quirky and have figured things out. But I mean, like, it's not that I mean to put myself on a pedestal. It's just that I truly see that, there are so many people around me that are struggling,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, I understand. You're not like
And
elitist about it. It's just a recognition of a
yeah,
problem.
and it's
So.
just, I feel like through a variety of and like, I guess for me, I, like everyone else, I was overwhelmed at one point with school and didn't know how to
Hmm.
handle things. But just for a lot of different factors, mostly because I mean, I have great parents. I've been lucky enough to have great teachers, great friends. I've been able to mature a lot and help help like I feel like I've figured things out pretty well at this point,
Sweet. Yeah.
And I feel like if in any way I can offer advice or insight or ideas that are powerful enough to motivate other people
Hmm.
to go on their own journeys to find out
On
what works
their own
life,
grind.
because like yeah, but I mean, like, because this is just what solutions I found for myself, but hopefully I can inspire other people to do their own self-reflection and
Oh,
find out what's going to work best for them in life,
absolutely. Yeah.
because I think a world where I can spread this message even just a little bit and have people lead better lives, I mean, I think that would make I mean, it would, that would make the world better if everyone could have a healthier relationship with themselves,
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I guess my sentiment would just be making your health a priority, because like you said, you know, it's like kind of taken as a joke,
Hmm.
and as like a kind of like a back burner thing.
Hmm.
And for me, everything else became so much easier when I was healthy, and when
Hmm.
that was a priority for me. So,
Yeah.
was there anything else you wanted to
Nah, I think
capitalize
that's
on?
actually a really good place to wrap it.
All right,
Signing off.
Daddy Big, signing off. I want to thank you guys for watching. Let us know down below I mean, I'm guessing a lot of my viewers are probably around the high school to college age. Let me know, if you've any big experiences or insights you've had. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Adios.